Hey curious minds, welcome back to Intriguing Info, the channel where we dig up the craziest, wildest, and stickiest stories from history. I'm your host, and today we're talking about a disaster so strange, so sweet, and so downright unbelievable that you might think I'm making it up. But trust me, this really happened. I'm talking about the time an entire city was flooded by molasses. Yep, molasses. You know that sticky syrupy stuff you put in gingerbread cookies? Now imagine it rampaging through the streets like a tidal wave of doom. Alright, let's rewind to January 15th, 1919. We're in the north end of Boston, a dense, working-class neighborhood filled with narrow streets, small homes, and lots of industrial buildings. It's a freezing cold day, and smack in the middle of it all stands a massive steel tank, 50 feet tall and 90 feet wide. What's inside this tank? 2.3 million gallons of molasses. That's enough syrup to fill 3 Olympic swimming pools. This tank belonged to the Purity Distilling Company, and it stored molasses for one very specific reason: to make rum. Because hey, it's 1919, prohibition is right around the corner, and the alcohol business is booming. But here's the thing, this tank was a disaster waiting to happen. On that chilly afternoon, disaster struck. The tank, which had already been leaking for years, yes years, suddenly exploded. Eyewitnesses described hearing a loud rumble, like a machine gun or a freight train. Then, boom! Out poured a 25-foot-high wall of molasses, moving at a speed of 35 miles per hour. That's faster than most people can run. The wave smashed through everything in its path: homes, wagons, telephone poles. Buildings were knocked off their foundations. Steel beams twisted like pretzels. It was like a slow-motion avalanche of sticky destruction. The molasses flood covered the streets in 2 to 3 feet of syrup, trapping people, animals, and debris. Tragically, 21 people lost their lives, and over 150 were injured. Many victims drowned or were crushed by debris. Imagine trying to outrun or swim through molasses. It's almost impossible. Horses were stuck so badly that they had to be euthanized. It was a devastating scene. Rescue efforts were chaotic. Firefighters and volunteers waded through waist-deep molasses, which made it nearly impossible to move. Even days after the disaster, the smell of molasses lingered in the air. And here's a bizarre detail. For decades afterward, on hot summer days, people claimed they could still smell molasses in Boston's North End. So, how did this happen? Turns out the molasses tank was a ticking time bomb. The Purity Distilling Company rushed to build it in 1915 and cut some major corners. For one, the steel they used was too thin to handle the pressure of 2.3 million gallons of molasses. And here's the kicker. The tank had been leaking molasses for years, but instead of fixing the problem, they just painted the tank brown to hide the leaks. I'm not kidding. This thing was a disaster waiting to happen. On that fateful day, the unusually warm weather caused the molasses to expand, building up pressure inside the tank. Combine that with shoddy construction, and well, you know the rest. The Great Molasses Flood led to one of the first ever class action lawsuits in the US. The company tried to blame anarchists for sabotaging the tank, because, of course, why take responsibility? But investigators found that poor maintenance and construction were to blame. In the end, the Purity Distilling Company was ordered to pay out $628,000 in damages. That's about $9.5 million in today's money. Today, the Great Molasses Flood remains one of history's strangest disasters. It's a story of corporate greed, bad engineering, and honestly, the absurdity of a molasses tsunami. There's even a plaque in Boston's North End to commemorate the event. And if you're ever there, take a moment to imagine the chaos of that sticky, sweet day in 1919. Let this be a lesson, folks. Never underestimate the power of a sticky situation. So, what do you think? Could you imagine living through a molasses tsunami? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this sticky tale, don't forget to hit that like button, smash subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another crazy story from history. Until next time, stay curious and stay sweet. This is Intriguing Info, signing off.